Hey, I'm Christian Schauf. Any questions?
Welcome to The Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and today was a wonderful conversation with one of the best men I know, Christian Schauf. And Christian he shares so many wonderful stories in this one that are entertaining, they're inspirational, and you'll get a lot out of them. There's a lot to learn in each of these stories that he presents, and I think this is one that I think you can listen to and you'll feel pretty pumped afterward. The guy is just absolutely incredible. A lot of learning and a lot of just inspiration in this one. Before we go on, a little bit of housekeeping. I appreciate you so much for listening. I appreciate you for sharing. Those that are sharing it on your social platforms really do me a huge favor, and I encourage you to do that. Help this show grow. I know I can't ask Christian every question. I try to do my best I can. If you have follow-up questions, you can actually find Christian at anyquestion.com/Christian Schauf. And when you go there, you'll be able to ask Christian any questions and he'll be able to get back to them and answer those for you. You can also see a bunch of other great athletes, coaches, health experts across the platform, including people like Jan Frodeno, Lucy Charles Barclay, Nino Schurter and Kate Courtney and Yolanda Neff in the mountain biking world, Caleb Dressel, and amongst others in the swimming world. There's so many swimmers on there now. So go check it out at anyquestion.com/Christian Schauf. It's just an amazing platform where you can ask questions and listens to answers all across the board. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. And remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. All right, I've had some of the world's greatest athletes, coaches, doctors, and sports scientists on the show, and I've enjoyed and learned so much from each and every one of them. But it's the entrepreneurs that I've had on that I've just learned and just been inspired from probably the most. Their willingness to just put it all on the line and go all in is just so inspirational. Anyway, my guest today is such a person. His journey to date is extraordinary, building several startups from apple cider to outdoor extreme event companies to survival gear to heading up a successful touring rock band. He's also led marketing campaigns for several large international brands, including Harley-Davidson and GoPro. And his newest venture is the Uncharted Supply Company. Uncharted, as quoted on their website, is gear to get you out there and all the way back. Uncharted has exploded over the last few years, and the business only started in November of 2016. And in 2017, the core product, the 72, was featured and kicked ass on the TV show Shark Tank. The 72 has been featured in the likes of Time, Outside Magazine, Popular Mechanics, and the Wall Street Journal. And customers have included the government organizations such as the CIA and the FBI, as well as companies like Nike and Warner Brothers and Airbnb. But more than all of that, my guest today is just a good mate of mine and a mentor and just somebody that's been a great sounding board for me over the years. So welcome and thanks for joining me on The Greg Bennett Show, Christian Schauf. How are you, mate?
I'm good, man. Wow, you did your homework. I'm impressed.
You know what's funny about this is you interviewed me on your podcast that you had going right when you started Uncharted. I don't know, what was that, 2017?
Somewhere there.
And it was really an inspiration for me to do my own podcast. You realize that?
You said that, and you've taken it a million times further than I ever did. For us, we were trying to figure out how to sell product, and we were like, let's advertise on podcasts. And we spent a lot of money doing it, and it just wasn't very successful. And I thought, well, why don't I just do my own podcast and offer a promo code? And that actually was more profitable. But as things go, when you're starting a business and you have 2 or 3 full-time employees, staying consistent was just impossible for me at the time. I'm glad I got you in because that was a great conversation, and I've always learned so much from you as well. But I'm glad you picked it up and have kept going because this is way bigger than anything I was able to do.
Well, it's funny, you were doing it for business. I was just doing it because I like to have conversations with people. So mine was a little bit more sustainable. My why factor is probably a little bit more sustainable. I just love having conversations with interesting people.
Right.
You've moved to Park City, right? The last couple of years. What's that move been like? You there now?
Yeah, I'm in Park City right now. I'm originally from Wisconsin. After, growing up there, I was in Minneapolis for about 8 or 10 years, and then, moved to Southern California for a job for about 4.5 years, and just did not like that, and always wanted to be in the mountains. Really? I just always, we were talking earlier about how you're a beach person that likes to visit the mountains. I'm probably the exact opposite. I'm a mountain person that likes to visit the beach, but I really love it out here. I mean, everything I love to do is a stone's throw away, whether it's hunting or mountain biking or fishing. I mean, there's days I come home from work and I decide to go to the river and catch a few trout, and that's my dinner. I mean, it's just, for me, that's really special, and I really do love it out here.
You really are like do you remember that show? Is it Grizzly Adams?
No, I can't grow a beard like that, man.
No, I don't know. Your beard's pretty good, mate. I was thinking about it as I prepared for this show, going, he's like my ultimate outdoors man. You're that guy that can do everything, has done everything. I'm always in awe of you. And I know I don't mean to embarrass you on this show, but it is that kind of, you are somebody, I don't know whether it's from growing up on a farm or there's some real strength about you and the outdoors and the survival. And we can go into this a bit later when we talk about your Uncharted, supply company that you've started. But you are that ultimate outdoors man. And I always look up to you in that sense, going, whenever I have a question to do with anything outdoorsy, you're my go-to. Let's do this. I want you to rewind the clock and tell me basically how we got here. You mentioned growing up on the farms in Wisconsin. Let's take that clock all the way back and let's see if we can ride this wave to today, which it's been a hell of a ride.
It has been a wild ride. I grew up on a farm in northern Wisconsin. My family was they weren't just farmers. We had a biodiesel plant. My great grandpa had started a company that, we had semis that would drive from our farm up to the northern edge of Minnesota on the Great Lakes and collect wood shavings from like the wood processing lumber plants and sell that as animal bedding. So that business was going. We had like 5,000 acres of crops. I remember my grandpa once saying, if your dad had 50 people at the farm, he'd find 51 jobs to do. That's just how I grew up. There was just always something that could be better, something that could be improved. As much as I don't want to say I hated it, but I didn't get to play Little League. Yeah. I didn't get to play with my friends. I can remember one time my friends pulling into the yard with their boat. They were going to the lake and said, jump in. And I had to bale hay all day. I mean, that was my life. And it was, I don't want to say I resented it, but it's frustrating when you're in your teens and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But boy, did it set the groundwork for kind of how my brain works for the rest of my life. And I'm extremely thankful for that. I don't know if anything replaces growing up on a farm and, you're talking about outdoors and figuring things out. It's just, when you're driving a tractor at 5 years old in the field by yourself, I think it programs you differently than a kid that's eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich watching Scooby-Doo. You get confidence, you get comfortable. And there hasn't been many things in my life where I was like, I can't do that. I really take pride in anything that comes across my plate. I'm like, okay, if I don't know how, I can figure it out. That was just a big part of it.
There's a real hardness that you get in those development years, that translates to the rest of your life. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm, but I grew up in a very disciplined all-boy family where sport was everything. And if you're going to start something, you finish it and you give something, you do your very, very best. And I'm always really appreciative for that sort of time in my life because I think that you always draw upon it as you do get older. And like you said, there's what's that quote actually? I'm sort of referring, is it Joe Rogan who said it, hard times create hard men.
I literally was going to say that quote. And it's
then
funny
you finish it off.
I have been familiar with that quote for about a decade.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you dig into my social media, I have posted that quote years ago, and Joe did make it famous recently. He's not the originator of it, but he started, you see all these little like TikTok videos and stuff where that's the background audio. And I'm like, man, that's been my guiding statement for years, but I'm glad people are catching up. But yeah, it's hard times. You can start, I think, wherever you want, but hard times make hard men make easy times make soft men make hard times, basically. I remember sitting in Iraq, and we'll get to that with a general, and he drew a little kind of a sine wave on a piece of paper, and as the sine wave curved down to the bottom, this was like, 5 years ago. He's like, I think we're about right here, about to bounce off the bottom. And it's basically saying the same thing. It's like, that's just human condition, is to go through those cycles. Life is unbelievably easy for society right now. And, everybody's hardest thing they've ever done is the hardest thing they've ever done. And when that hard thing isn't that hard, I really think it affects so much. I've gotten to be friends with this guy, Michael Easter. Michael wrote a book called The Comfort Crisis. I would implore everyone listening to this right now to go read that book. But I read it and I was like, this is all the things that I've inherently known that he put science behind. But it's just about how comfort can ruin everything. And even finding struggle, like, of your own free will, not, ending up in a hard thing, but struggling against something every day can just insanely improve your life. And you as the athlete you are, and a lot of the people you've had on the show know that, you know how certain things can be so easy when you're so used to everything being hard, right? Like life doesn't seem that bad when you're always in that mindset. So sorry, tangent, but that's the quote or something like that. And
I'm all about tangents on this show, and I love that. And I do think one of the reasons we have an explosion in endurance sports and CrossFit and obstacle course racing, all of those kinds of things, is I think people are desperately trying to harden themselves up a little bit, because we are in the softest of times. I mean, we can get anything we want. We can. Running water all the way through to shelter is around and available more than it's ever been. And I think we're looking to harden ourselves up a little bit.
100%. I always told people, like, I never understood the appeal of like a Tough Mudder or a Spartan race until I lived in California. And then when I was in California, like, the hardest thing I could do really was go for a road bike ride through Malibu and up in the canyons and stuff and beat myself up. But I suddenly understood why people just wanted to feel dirty. They just wanted to they're literally paying people to run through a farm field with cow crap and whatever else.
You're like, I did that my whole life.
Right. Well, right. But I also realized how much I missed it once I was in an environment where I couldn't even, I could go to the beach, but it's just, sand. And it was so hard to find that feeling. And it was one of the things that made me move to Park City. I actually went on a very kind of aggressive elk hunt while I was living in Orange County. And I remember driving home thinking, I can't live without that anymore. Like, I need that. That actually, I'm remembering what it feels like to feel alive. And this is after going to Iraq 40 times and growing up on a farm. It's just, I dropped into that Orange County existence where it's just always 75 and sunny and everything's comfortable. And it was unnerving. It was uncomfortable for me knowing what I knew.
Isn't it amazing, the psyche that we can have, that it's like the dream is to have 75 and comfortable. And then when you're there, it's like, hang on, no, I need the challenge. I need the struggle to feel alive, right? I mean, there's a purpose that you're missing suddenly. And
humans always kind of trend towards easy. I mean, historically, how often were we comfortable as cavemen? Like maybe 2 hours once a month, we were always struggling, but you work towards that. And so now we're in a society where it's like, if I'm cold, I just push a button on my phone and my house gets warmer. And we don't face the struggle. I do these big hunts, right? And I always think about this. I was on this moose hunt in British Columbia, and it was 20 below zero. We did 134 miles in about 4 days on foot, chasing this one moose. And, at the farthest out, I was, just the shelter I had was basically my Gore-Tex jacket and puffy layers and whatever. And I remember getting back to my little 1-person tent that night and it feeling like absolute luxury, even though it was still 15 below zero and I was in a 3-season tent, freezing my butt off. And then you would go from the tent, back to the little hut where we had kind of started our hunt out of, and there was a wood burning stove. And oh my gosh, Greg, like that wood burning stove, like I felt like a billionaire.
Yeah.
Like, just to be able to not have to wear 6 layers was, and then you go from that and I get back to my truck and my truck has like heated seats. But when you don't do those things, the truck is just the truck, right? It's just, that's your like baseline. And so I love those experiences because it reminds you like how easy it is. And I think it's really important to be reminded and to be in those environments where it's hard. It's just that nobody really does it anymore.
It's one word jumps out at me, and it's perception, right? It's that ability to perceive something differently when you have a struggle or you have a scare or you have something that's an adversity that you've had to overcome. You then perceive life differently. I kind of think about it, and I don't mean to draw it back to me, but this past year when our little daughter, 3-year-old, gets bitten by a rattlesnake, and we spent a week in, intensive care hospital in Denver, and it was really, really scary. As a parent, it was just the worst time of my life. And coming out of that, it was like nothing mattered anymore. The little things that would have stressed me out, but if I had to fly to announce a race in Slovakia and realize that my US passport had expired on the Friday and I was leaving the following Tuesday. And I just shrugged my shoulders. I was like, oh, well, I'm probably not going, and it was that whole thing of going, oh, well, whereas in the past, that would have really stressed me out. But here I'm 5 weeks, of post my child coming out of hospital. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, maybe I'm not going. And that kind of scenario, those frights, those scares, the hard times can really change the way you perceive the world.
100%. I remember being in Iraq years ago, and this was before there was Wi-Fi on the bases. And I logged into Facebook in the like little computer room at this one big base we were at. And I had literally just like the hour before spent some time with some guys who had been blown up by a roadside bomb, and their skin was melted and missing ears and missing legs, and they were like really positive. They were kind of back to kind of visit the guys before they were heading out, and just an amazing story of just perseverance. It was like 4 of these guys, and they were telling jokes and they were joking about not having an ear and you can't hear me and all this stuff, right? And then I go into this computer lab and I get on Facebook, and this girl who I was a Facebook friend with, wrote "worst day ever," and I was like, oh, what's this? And in the comments somebody said, what's wrong? And she's like, we got to the lake and the boat's battery was dead and we couldn't ski for half the time we were at the cabin. And I just like unfriended her, logged out, and walked away. But what a slap in the face of like contrast of like what your worst day ever is, right? And back to your point, it's just one of those things where like the more you get out there and the more you realize, the more you can appreciate how good life is. And that really does guide a lot of how I think about everything day to day.
You are somebody that seems to chase this feeling alive, this whether it be hunting, and you've mentioned, going to Iraq. You're somebody that doesn't mind to put themselves in circumstances that could be volatile if things, went the wrong way. I mean, tell me a bit more about Iraq. What is that all about?
Yeah, well, I'll say first, like one of my other favorite quotes is, life is not a dress rehearsal. And I think about that a lot. Like when we were talking earlier, I got a stomach bug over New Year's. I sat on the couch for 2 days and I felt like I was just missing my entire life because I didn't do anything for 2 days. When you have that mindset, I think you have a lot of FOMO for sure, because you're always searching for like, how do I maximize the day? Like I shouldn't sleep in. There's things I could be experiencing or things I could be achieving. And I think you have to keep that in check a little bit, but, it's definitely how I think about things. So, you go to Iraq I was a musician for about 10 years. It started off very innocently. My brother and I and some friends started a little band in Northwest Wisconsin playing covers. And I just always said, hey, as long as it keeps growing, I'll stick with it. Well, a couple years in, suddenly we're working with Prince and his guys in Minneapolis, and we're touring. I think we ended up playing in 35 countries around the world. We did 3 albums. Most people have never heard of our band because we had record label offers, but they were straight up slavery contracts. And I had enough of an education and experience that we were able to make a business out of it without needing a record label. That was kind of a dangerous thing to sign. So, we were okay with not being famous, and we were getting to go and play shows and travel around. I mean, we did the national anthem at a NASCAR race once. It was 176,000 people live on ESPN. And, we played gigs in front of 50,000 and 90,000, and they weren't all like that, but we got to taste kind of the cool side of that stuff. As we were touring around in our crappy van, and you pull into Chicago late at night and it's cold and set up, and I was kind of getting disenchanted with it. I really, as you can tell now, I'm an outdoors person. I love the mornings, love being outside, and I was spending a lot of time just in clubs and in cars. And we were at South by Southwest doing a showcase, playing, and these guys with high and tight haircuts came up and said, hey, would you guys be interested in playing for the troops overseas? And we were just like, yeah, like that sounds great. And it was kind of around the time when I was thinking about maybe this isn't what I want to do much longer. But that opened up another kind of 7 to 10 years of basically playing music and doing all this. So we went over on the first tour, played about 30 shows in 2.5 weeks in Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, some other countries over there. In a conversation with Colonel Scott Rainey, who is the chief of programs at the time, he was explaining to me that there was about 330, 350 bases at the time during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and only about 30 of them were getting entertainment and getting bands. And the reason being is it was too dangerous to convoy. So they couldn't drive anywhere, so they had to fly. And the military was renting these old speaker systems, these PA systems from this group in Kuwait. And these were these old, like Motley Crue, huge speaker boxes. So they could only take like a C-130 or C-17, which were very big airplanes and jets, to these bases because they had so much gear. Well, we went home, and as I said earlier, working with the Prince team and all those guys, we had access to some really amazing sound engineers. So my brother and I measured the inside of a Black Hawk helicopter out, and we went home and we taped it off on the floor and said, we need to build a PA system that fits into this space. And we did that. And we went back and called the Pentagon and said, guys, I think we can hit those 300 bases. And they were like trusting enough to say, well, you guys come, do the test pilot program. And if it works, we'll go from there. And it absolutely worked. And so for the next, almost decade of my life, my brother and I were just flying to Iraq all the time. We ended up playing 150 shows, my band. We were named Armed Forces Entertainers of the Year, but then probably at a larger scale, we started sending other groups. We'd send the Pussycat Dolls. We'd guide the Spin Doctors and Hoobastank around Iraq, and all those bands. I did a thing called Bikes Over Baghdad, where we built skate parks, and we took all the X Games BMX riders, and we'd do kind of stunt shows for the troops. And then we leave the ramps and the bikes. So they had a skate park at the bases. And for almost 10 years of my life, it was 39 trips of 2 to 4 weeks every time. I was flying to Iraq, jumping out of Black Hawks, going between forward operating bases and joint security stations. And it was wild, man. I had my 30th birthday in Sadaam's bedroom.
What?
They gave me that room, for my birthday. And they found a cake that said happy 75th birthday. Somebody had made a cake and they found it. I mean, it wasn't 75, but it was just funny. I mean, we had surface to air missile hit our airplane one night. I mean, we had sniper fire and we'd land at times, had a car bomb knock me over once. I got to drive tanks around. We got to shoot 50 cals. I mean, it's like a movie I watched once when I look back at it. And it was just...
Did you ever feel threatened for your life? You say you shot and...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I specifically remember one time. We had been over once or twice, and then we had signed kind of this big agreement with the DOD and with the Pentagon to, bring over X amount of tours that year. And I remember we checked into this base, and my brother and I were sharing a little Connex. It's like a little tiny container, big enough for 2 little single beds, 2 little kind of chests, and like a toilet and a sink, And we were laying in there, and for some reason ours didn't have the heat on. Turns out that morning, everybody else had heat and light, but we didn't, which made it a little more sinister. It was actually very cold that night. So we were having a hard time going to sleep, and we were the last one on the edge of the base, and there was a gunfight going on just on the other side. And we could hear explosions and gunfire, and we could hear guys' voices. It felt like they were going to come knock on our door any second. Oh. And I mean, my brother and I we took our bulletproof jackets and like used them as a blanket, because I was like, I don't know if like something's going to drop and blow up or what's going to happen. And I remember Zach asking me, he's like, do you think we're going to live through this? Oh. And I said, yeah, man, for sure. And I was laying there and I'm like, I have no idea, This is terrifying. And I really thought I made a big mistake by signing up for this, because this was like the first of like 20 tours we agreed to. And that was one of the worst nights. But you'd have these tours where it was absolutely boring and nothing would happen. And then you'd be standing there and all of a sudden a siren would go off and you needed to jump into a bunker as fast as you can. And, some mortar round would hit somewhere nearby, and, you might hear shrapnel flying around, you might not, and you wait for the all clear, and then you go back to work. And, I always kind of likened it to lightning striking. When you were on the base, if it was your time, it was your time. There wasn't a whole lot you could do about it. We saw it hit a few times. I've got some really funny pictures of us all under tables in the dining room, with ice cream cones waiting for the all clear, because, bombs were falling, and, wow. It was just wild, man. But again, you come back to the US and, things feel just a little more chill after that.
I mean, what is that feeling like? I mean, honestly, you're painting great pictures here of imagery that I can kind of see, but is there a deep-seated fear, or is it just kind of like because you're with your brothers, it's like is there a camaraderie that overtakes the fear and you just kind of get on with it? Or I don't know. I'm a fairly anxious person as it is. Is it one of those things that you have to consciously control and make sure it doesn't get out of hand, that fear?
Yeah, I don't know if there's one way to define this, because different days you felt different ways. Yeah. I actually have a tattoo that says fortune favors the bold, and then has a Bible verse that, I can do all things through Christ. And it was like a reminder that I was on a mission from God. When we signed up for it, I remember my mindset being, if those guys are all over there protecting our freedoms and serving our country, I don't have the right to say no if I have the ability to go over and help. That was kind of it. It was like, I was asked to go. I and, my group, my brother, we had the capabilities to make their lives better. You shouldn't say no. You should just say yes, and you should go, because it's what you can do to leave your mark and to help. Right. So for me, it was never a should we go or not. It was just this is our path. Like, this is what we've been called to do, and we're going to go do it. That said, there were really scary moments. Man, I remember crying watching the movie Lone Survivor. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but all of his buddies died, and he's there by himself, and he's so far from home. I remember times where I was not sure we were going to live through the night. Stuff was going off. And in those moments, kind of like you said with Sydney and with the snake bite, it's nothing else matters. Like, you just kind of want to be home, and you just kind of want to be with what's really important in your life. And I'm thankful for those moments, because I made it through, but it also really, there's a lot of clarity in those moments, and they can be scary. And other times there was stuff going off, and your mindset's a little different, and it just kind of feels like you're in a rodeo, and you're hanging on, and it's kind of fun, and you're kind of laughing about it. But yeah, man, it's a wide range of emotions. And I was not in the service. I didn't serve. I always tell people we were not cowboys, but I definitely feel like we were rodeo clowns. We were kind of in the arena and trying to make people laugh, but it was still scary. Yeah. It was really scary.
Yeah, and you must have made some really fantastic relationships through that 10-year experience.
Gosh, we met the most amazing people. And, more so than anything, the thing I realized, and it almost sounds kind of over exaggerated when I say it here, but it's true. Like, over and over, we'd hear people say, for 2 hours, I forgot I was in Iraq. And gosh, I needed that. I would get emails from, wives that I didn't know that said, hey, I know you don't know me. My husband's been kind of down the dumps for a long time, and he just sent me the most positive email he's had in months, because you guys let him come up and play a song on your guitar. And he sent me a bunch of pictures, and I can't tell you how thankful I am. And it's such a simple thing for us to do, but I think for those guys, it was, at times it was powerful, and it was the little reprieve sometimes you need for a hard reset and to kind of get through your mission or your time over there. So your deployment. So, yeah, man, it was crazy.
I could sit and make this whole show about this, mainly because I appreciate what you've gone and done, and obviously appreciate all the men and women that are serving around the world for our freedom. So we could spend the whole show on this, but I do want to move on. And you came back and you've taken this entrepreneurial mindset that you had, whether it be a band playing in Iraq or starting the extreme games, BMX group that you took over there for shows. Mm-hmm. And then what was the next part of this journey? Because you took this sort of mindset and you continued on.
Before we started with the Iraq stuff, we had been touring as a band, and I ended up meeting a guy that was starting a hard apple cider company that was called Crispin Cider. And before he started, he came to me. I'd been helping him with some other projects with his other company. And he said, "Hey, I'm starting this and I want you to come be employee number one." And I was like, "Yeah, sounds good." I think when you're kind of that post-college era, you just kind of take whatever job comes your way if it sounds exciting, and you try to get close to mentors, and you just always say yes. And so Joe Heron and I, worked out of his attic and built Crispin Cider. I kind of stepped away a little bit as I was going to Iraq a bunch. I helped where I could when I was home, but that ended up selling to Miller Coors, which was such a cool experience. Just kind of start from day one and watch it quickly grow and sell. And that was kind of like I want to do that at some point. Right. So, while we were doing these tours, we started getting sponsors, more so just so we could make the shows better for the troops. Harley-Davidson, GoPro, Fox Racing, groups like that would send over product, and we would, collect content and create videos and tell the stories. And it was really powerful. I remember Harley-Davidson telling us that we were kind of like the number one Harley-Davidson dealer in the world for a couple months while we were doing a tour, meaning like the sales we were driving from the kind of the shows, the stuff we were talking about was at a clip that they hadn't seen. So that was really cool. But I came back and, I did more projects for those guys. I had some friends at GoPro. We kind of did a few things together. And then I ended up taking a job in Orange County, California for a fitness app company. I really thought the technology was interesting. It was based on biofeedback. This was way before, Whoop and all of those. You'd wear a Bluetooth heart rate monitor. It would measure your zone and measure your cadence. It'd take into consideration temperature and everything else. And then you'd have a coach's voice. I mean, I worked with, Tim O'Donnell and Rinda Carfree. They'd record workouts, and I'd go for a run, and Rinny would be in my head yelling at me if I was going too slow or too fast. And they were really awesome. It was really fun. And, it was some technology I really believed in, but the longer I was there, the more I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. It was really hard going from flying around in Blackhawks and kind of having your life on the line to make people smile, and then suddenly being in a very white corner office in Orange County, California. There was a hole missing, and I didn't feel like I was living life. And so I had this desire to figure out what was next. And I actually was going to Steamboat Springs to go skiing one New Year's, and loaded up my F-150. And I was actually meeting Tim and Rinny out there, come to think of it, and driving out, and there was 2 inches of snow in the mountains behind Orange County, and traffic stopped for like 8 hours. And I just sat there going, what kind of humans are these that can't navigate 2 inches of snow? Like, this is a big nothing for everybody I've been around with military and farm and outdoors. And it just kind of hit me. Wow. What happens if there's an earthquake? What happens if there's whatever? And that kind of led me to starting Uncharted, that moment.
And that was, let's talk about Uncharted, because this has been a big thing in your life the last 5-6 years. I remember when you started it. I don't know how, the first product you started was a product called the 72. I think I mentioned it in the intro there. Did we buy it online, or did we buy it directly from you? I can't remember how it was all set up there, but it was started very granular, very, almost like it was out of your home office type thing. Let's talk about Uncharted, because this has been amazing. Basically, all your expertise, all your experience and all your learning for the past 40 years of your life have come to this point and gone, this is why this product works and this is what it's about. Let's start with the why. You just talked about it, people sitting in a car for 8 hours, they can't drive through 2 inches of snow. Is that it, or is the why a bit bigger? What is the why of Uncharted Supply?
Yeah, I get asked the why a lot when we meet with investors and journalists. And I always say, I want to leave a legacy. I want to make the world a better place. I think being in Iraq all those years and seeing what a difference one person can make was really almost addicting. And I'm trying to figure out how to do more of that. That said, I'm also fully not Mother Teresa. I want to make some money. And I want to be honest about that. I want to build a business that can afford me to go heli skiing or, to buy a cool triathlon bike or whatever, Yeah. So I struggled for a long time trying to figure out what that was. And when the Uncharted idea kind of popped into my head, it was a very goosebumpy moment because, to your point, like everything I'd done in my life kind of dovetailed into this idea. And generally, my hypothesis was, wow, the world is quickly changing. And again, think this is 5-6 years ago before any of this stuff that's happened in the last couple of years was even on anyone's radar. But I kind of started looking at all the trends around natural disasters and population centers and global unrest and politics, and everything was crescendoing. And at the same time, my personal experience was, there were less people that grew up on a farm. My kids aren't going to grow up on a farm. It's just, and I say that anecdotally, but it's like, we now have gone from kind of generalists. My dad can do just about anything fairly well. And now the best jobs are you do one very narrow thing very, very at a very high level, right? And that's great. And that's fine. It's just that you don't get the experiences of changing a flat in the middle of a field with just the tools around you. You don't get the experience of a storm coming in and knowing how to navigate it, or interacting with animals, or figuring out how to just problem solve. A lot of that stuff is really a skill that you have to learn, you have to work at, and you have to kind of experience. And people just don't get it. So I'm sitting there going, wow, how do you create a product or a brand that could actually help people navigate those situations when, I always say this, like they've never been outside before. And I know people have been outside, but the idea being when they don't have a lot of experience. And so that's what informed the 72. I started working on something. I used my experience as a starting point and ran it up against my buddies who were guides on Mount Everest and who were special forces guides and who were doctors and surgeons and bush pilots and all these guys. And when I got to, I always said to them, hey, I don't want to know what you have for you. You're an expert. This is what you do. But like, would you be able to give this to your 10-year-old son if you were across the country and know that would be a game changer for them? How do you make something effective and simple and not too heavy and not too big and not too overwhelming? And that was what informed the 72. And when I got to a place where it was ready to go, I remember I was talking to Joe Herron, the guy that started the cider company, and I was showing it to him and he goes, what are your sales? And I'm like, my sales? I'm like, I just got this thing together like yesterday. He's like, if you don't have any sales, you don't have any business. He's like, why aren't you selling? And I'm like, he's right, So I quickly set up an Indiegogo, like a crowdfunding page, I remember that, and just turned it on. And I kind of didn't have much of a plan. I just turned it on, and we ended up setting a record, for sales. And I said in the page, hey, this will all ship before Christmas. And I was like, yeah, we'll probably sell like 100 of these. And we ended up selling like 1,500. And so, back to your point about, just kind of kitting these things together. I had like an 800 square foot apartment in Santa Monica, and I had to get like 2 storage spaces, and literally UPS would drop off 50 boxes of paracord. And I'd have to load them in my truck and drive them to the storage space and, put most of them over there and bring 5 boxes into my house. And my house became an assembly line. And it just kind of exploded on us, and we were off to the races.
So the 72, do you give us a bit more on what that is so people can have an understanding?
Sure. So it's called the 72 because statistically, and I've been trying to research to see if this has changed lately, but 95% of all survival situations, everything from a flat tire to September 11th, are resolved in 72 hours, meaning the cavalry has arrived in 72 hours. But what you do in those 72 hours is usually life or death, and it's usually up to you. So the idea was, I'm living in California. Everybody has small apartments. Nobody's building a bunker. Nobody has $10,000 in food stores in some downstairs thing. There's not the room. There's not the money. People just weren't interested in that. But wow, if for 95% of the situations, I could build something small that would get them through, that to me seemed really compelling. right? So we end up with this backpack. It's a dry bag. It weighs 11 and a half pounds. It's 6 by 12 by 18. And inside it, screen printed instructions, color coordinated pockets, basically everything you needed. So when your adrenaline's spiking and there's an emergency, you could open that thing up and make your situation better quickly. And that's kind of the goal, right? It's for most people, they don't understand the adrenaline spike that happens when you're in an emergency situation. You haven't been there before. And that's usually the biggest problem, overcoming that, because you're not thinking clearly, you're making quick, rash decisions. And a lot of times you're making a bad situation worse. So for me, it's like you open this thing up, color coordinated, the first aid pocket in there is a bunch of pockets, is bright red. If you need first aid, you can eliminate everything else and focus on that. And that's a good decision. And now you're starting to trend in the right direction. And hopefully that's getting your heart rate to slow down a little. It's getting you calm. It's helping you think and helping you out of the situation. So that's how we started. And now, we have a ton of products and they all kind of follow that same mentality. It's like very simple, very effective, very high quality, designed. So if you are super compromised, it can still get you out of a situation.
It comes into that prevention mindset, doesn't it? It's like we often talk in sport about preventing the body from injury. This is kind of being prepared. I don't like to use that word too much in this space because preppers kind of get a bit of a strange name to them, but it is about being prepared for the unknown, because until you have that moment of where your heart rate variability becomes very tight, it doesn't move, your sympathetic nervous system is through the roof, and you're just going fight or flight, it is very hard to make conscious, good decisions.
Right.
It's funny because you don't realize it. I had my experience, and again, I'm going to bring it back to me again this year with Sydney getting bitten by that rattlesnake. And I got a phone call from Laura, because I wasn't with Laura, poor thing. She was on her own with Sydney and Archer, our little guy. I picked up the phone and her face is on the FaceTime, and she just says, "Sydney's been bitten by a rattlesnake.
Ooh.
Get to the hospital," or something. It was something very... And I was waiting to pick up friends at Denver airport. So I was just sitting there. I was like, okay, go.
Right.
So I started driving. I actually started driving. I'm going down the 470 highway completely in the wrong direction. And because she was being flown by helicopter to Denver from Boulder, I was going the wrong direction. I actually pulled over to the side and just said, okay, breathe. And first thing I did, just started breathing. The breathing exercises they were just amazing, right? I just did it for like 1 minute.
Yep.
Didn't look at phone, didn't do anything. I just breathed. Then I was like, okay. And suddenly I started making conscious, disciplined decisions. But it was that moment of that fight or flight that I hadn't experienced in a long time anyway, that you don't realize that your body's going to react in such a way. And so this preventative side of things that you're trying to do is say, hey, look, get it, put these products in the right places. I think one of the mistakes we did with our 72, it was downstairs in the basement. And it's like, well, what good is that? We need to have it in a place where we can use it.
Right.
And so there's an education component, I guess, that you need with these products as well, and telling people where they should have them for the future, right? That must be a huge part of what you're doing.
Yeah, we're doing more and more education all the time. And, to your point, I know this is, a heavily triathlon podcast.
Not always.
Well, there's probably a lot of those guys listening, at least a lot of guys that cycle, or a lot of guys and girls that ride bikes. And, just imagine you're in the race of your life and you get a flat. And just think of the emotions that you felt when you go through that, right? And compare that to when you get a flat when you're in a group ride. You get a group ride, you pull over. Hey guys, I got a flat. I just calm, change the tire, back on the road. When you're in a race, it's like, think how many times you flub something and you're screwed up, and you're probably doing them both at the same speed. It's just one's way calmer. Yeah. And now take that analogy and put it like life or death, right? And think about the adrenaline that hits your body. It's that kind of experience that, I always tell people, hey, you don't want your first football game to be the Super Bowl. Like, when it comes to survival, like you want to go out and try these things. Like, can you start a fire? Can you build a tourniquet? Can you, like, whatever it is? And, that's a big part of why I do what I do all the time, because I think you want to be ready. I mean, last winter, my dog almost died. I was ski touring up in the mountains and with some friends, and my buddy and my dog collided, and he cut his front arm or his front leg with the ski and was hemorrhaging blood miles and miles from a vet. And it was shocking how my training just came in and took over. And I was able to get a tourniquet on him, bandage him up, throw on my shoulders. I had one friend figure out which vet was open. It was a Saturday afternoon. Make sure they stay open. Sent one guy down to get the snowmobile. He'd never been on a snowmobile. I had 2 walkie-talkies. Take one, call me when you get there. And man, we got my dog to the vet, and the vet came out after an hour of surgery and said, he had 2 or 3 minutes left, and that was it. And the fact that I had the gear with, that I was able to do this, and the fact that I'd been through this so many times, saved my best friend's life, And so those are just, man, those are powerful moments when you start to realize how quickly things can go the wrong direction on just an innocent ski day. And like with Sydney, he started heading the wrong direction. Then you calmed yourself down. And I would bet a lot of money that all of that experience and calming yourself down came from being competitive and putting yourself in tough situations and thinking through. I know you think through everything. And it's funny how even just the triathlon application applied to you getting to your daughter in the time you needed to. It's powerful to me. It's really interesting and really valuable.
This is part of the reason I've been really looking forward to putting you on the app that I'm involved with Any Question, because not only are you on this podcast for your business savvy and your entrepreneurial skills, but I really think you could be a great teacher and educator to others on this, exactly what we're talking about, because you need to go out and practice these things. Are you running courses? Do you, out of Uncharted Supply Company in Utah, do you guys run courses for us to come and do? Do you do anything like that?
It's in the pipeline for this year. We've been delayed given COVID and everything else, and the demand we've had for products. Our attention really is just turned to like trying to get gear out the door to people. But it's definitely on our short list of things. This year, you're going to see a lot more content from us. Classes, educational opportunities. And but even if we're not doing it, there's a lot of that out there, whether it's a survival class or a first aid class or a Avi 1 or whatever. Man, I can't recommend enough that people just, take that Saturday afternoon and go do that. It could be life or death. Definitely
the first aid. My brother went through that with his daughter in a swimming pool. Because he's a teacher, he had to have done his resus, and she was gone for about 10 minutes, and he actually kept her alive. And it's a scary, horrific story, but she's all healthy, all fine. But it was like, that was when I heard that, it was like, okay, Laura, you and I, let's sign ourselves up for these first aid resus courses and keep up to date. And I mean, that's just at a very basic level, but mate, I'll come out to Park City and I'll do one of your courses. A quick mini break. I encourage you to go check out Any Question. You can use anyquestion.com/Christian Schauf and go to Any Question, and you can ask questions to any of the experts on the platform. You can listen to all of their answers. You can go ask Christian any questions following up from this podcast that you might have, and he'll get back to you and answer those for you there. Shark Tank. Tell me, how did that all come about? And like I said in the intro, you did amazing on it, and you really kicked ass. But there's more to it, all right?
Yeah, there's always more to it. So when I started Uncharted, I was still doing all these military tours, and some of the BMX guys had pretty big careers. The one guy, Mike Escamilla, who I just saw 2 nights ago in Las Vegas. I was out there for a trade show. Mike, he's been on LA Inc. He was a pro BMXer. He's had action figures and custom shoes, and he's a stuntman. He's been in all the Marvel movies. And if you ever watch Paul Blart Mall Cop, when he's in the Rainforest Cafe and he shoots that scuba tank at the guy, that's Mike that gets hit with a scuba tank. So, Mike's got an agent, and he knows a bunch of people. And we get going on this, and we were talking, and I watched every episode of Shark Tank while I was building Uncharted, because it was just great to have in the background. Every time they'd ask a question about a business, I thought about how I would answer that. That really helped me kind of focus on what was important when I was starting. But Mike, I said, hey, we got to get on Shark Tank. And Mike was, helping me with some things, and was able to leverage his agent to get a call with the casting director. And she got on a call with us and said, yeah, nice to meet you guys. Listen, send a tape in and I promise to watch it. That's all I can really promise you. You know, I have to be pretty even and fair about all this. So Mike and I built the craziest audition tape, I think, in the history of the world. I got to dig it up somewhere, but we made fun of the sharks and we did, the walking out. We had an intro where we're walking out and we just keep getting lost. It's like, we're just in this endless walk with the music playing. And then it was funny. It was really funny and it got their attention. And I think the submission process, it's been a while now. I think from when we applied to when we were actually filming was 8 months, something like that. It was a long process. There were 3 or 4 rounds of, here's a ton of paperwork, background checks, financial records. Wow. They wanted to make sure they weren't pulling somebody on that had some bad stuff happening in the background. We had to film a couple different times here in Utah and send the tape in and gosh, and then they invite us out to Culver City and we're supposed to film on a Sunday and they call us on Friday afternoon and say, you're going tomorrow morning. And it was, I swear they were just trying to keep you on your toes. Yeah. The day we went into film, we got there like 4 a.m. and we have to sit in this little trailer. And they're like, yeah, we'll probably have you out at like 8 a.m., do makeup. You'll probably be in by 9:30. 2 p.m. we're still just sitting there. And then they're like, ooh, these tapings have taken a while. We might have you go home. And I'm like, so come back tomorrow? They're like, no, we might have you come back in a few months. We don't know what'll happen, but you'll probably just go back to Utah and we didn't get to you. And I was like, oh my gosh, after months of preparing and we're sitting here talking about this and they come in, they're like, oh, these guys wrapped up. You're next. Let's go. So I went from like, I think I'm flying home to some lady, putting makeup on my face and like, hurry up, you're in next. And then we get into the green room and they're miking us up and Mike starts to like go through his lines and he's kind of freaking out. And we're sitting there and they're like, oh, well, the sharks might have dinner after this, they have to stop at a certain time. These guys are actually taking longer. So actually you might just go home. And I'm like, oh gosh. So now we're going home. And then just like before, oh, they're done. Go stand over, the hallway you walk in, like, we'll stand here. You guys ready? Okay, here we go. And it was just, I remember standing there and I look at Mike, I'm like, you ready? And he's like, yeah. And he's like looking at his hand. He had notes on his hand. They're like smudged. He's like looking at him trying to remember. And I'm like, wow, they really want to keep you on your toes. Right. So we walked in and I think we were in the tank, quote unquote, for like an hour. And I think our segment was about 5 or 6 minutes. So a lot of conversation goes on. We had a lot of great conversation, a lot of stuff I wish they would have shown in the show. But, our strategy, you talk about company valuation, you know what your sales are, you know what multiples are in your industry, and you kind of figure out what's good. And we had this valuation we felt really good about. And then that morning sitting in the trailer, I was like, wait a minute, why? Like, it made me realize what I wanted to do is I wanted the sharks to fight over us. If we got to TV, I wanted them all wanting a piece of it because my perspective was people at home are probably not doing the math, paying attention more than if the sharks like it, it must be a good product. It must be cool. And so we slashed our valuation by like 3/4. I was like, let's go in there and just offer a crazy deal based on what our sales are. And let's be humble about it. And let's try to get the sharks fighting with each other over us and kind of shift how this goes.
That's awesome.
And that's what we did. We went in and they were like, what are your sales? And that's what you're asking for? I'm in. And so, they became this bit of a fight. And, Mark Cuban he's like, you don't need anybody. You guys are killing it. Like, I don't want to take a cut of your business. You guys got this. I like to help people that need help. And, it was just, there was a lot of fun stuff that happened. In the end, we agreed to twice the valuation with Robert Herjavec on the show. That's like speed dating. And then you have your kind of due diligence process afterwards. We never did reach a deal after the show. And we ended up taking an investment from a different group for 5 times the valuation that we had agreed to in Shark Tank.
Oh, so you don't have to take the deal on Shark Tank. It's just kind of a show.
I've signed NDAs around this, so I have to be kind of careful what I say. Okay. But it's what I'll tell you is you agree to something in principle, and then both sides have a due diligence process they go through to make sure it all makes sense. And in that process, the Herjavec group was interested in changing what things looked like. And at that point, the deal didn't work for us and we just didn't reach an agreement. Gotcha. So, I don't know anybody else's deal. I would assume that probably happens a lot. I don't know how those guys, what is it, season 18 or something? Let's say they each bring on 10 companies a season. There's no way any incubator could support 150, 180 companies, right? So I'm assuming there's a lot of that, but that said, we were entertaining enough that we were in episode 1 of season 9. And gosh, what a shot in the arm for our company. It just, it gave us so much exposure. And I remember that night we had almost $1 million in sales in that 48-hour period from when Shark Tank aired.
Wow, I remember that actually, because I think we'd already bought our 72, and I knew, and wasn't you recorded like months before it came out, and you couldn't tell us anything, right? Is that what happened?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think we recorded like June and it aired in September. It was something like that. And we just had to keep our mouth shut. We couldn't tell people if we'd recorded or not, if we'd been in or not. And we didn't know until, maybe a couple of weeks before if we were even going to be on air.
Yeah.
It was nerve-wracking and exciting.
What a great marketing thing though, more than anything, right? Rather than getting the deal, just getting on the show must have been huge.
Absolutely. It was a game changer for us, and I'm so thankful for it. It was really a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It's fun to be in there, and those guys play games. They all talk at the same time. They all demand your attention at the same time. They try to kind of rattle you a little, and
makes better TV, mate. Makes better TV.
Exactly. And Mike said it all the time. He's like, you have to remember they're trying to make a TV show first.
Yes.
And he was so right. So we went in there and we said stuff that we didn't tell them we were going to say, that kind of threw them for a loop, and we were trying to mess with them back, and it made really good TV, and it was really fun.
No, that was awesome. I remember watching it. That was so cool. Since then, I guess about a year or 2 years after that, we hit the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. March, April of 2020, none of us knew what was going on. The information coming out was like the world was going to end. If you'd listened to, CNN or whatever, it was like every day the world was about to explode. How did that affect your business, I guess, on that end, people wanting survival packs, if you like, to your actual business of actually being able to get product and get it out to people? I mean, it must have been a bit of a crazy time.
I always tell people it was bittersweet because we could have sold probably 5 times what we did. That said, our company doubled in a year. It doubled in a year where we didn't have inventory for half a year.
Yeah, right.
It was just the demand for survival kits and air masks. And I mean, there was a panic for sure. We did our best to manage it. We went out and raised some money very quickly, tried to get more inventory in as much as we could. I spent a lot of my life trying to source high quality N95 air masks. I mean, just out of service. Like we didn't even make a penny on them. We were just trying to get them to our customers and try to be helpful, given that that's what we do as a business. It was really fun, actually. We've included N99, which is a step up from N95, air masks since day one with all of our survival kits. So it was really fun to send an email out to all of our customers and say, hey, while you're all looking for air masks, you've got one, in your kit with multiple filters. And, we thought about this stuff. Yeah. And, that was a proud moment for me, because a lot of times people, when we were starting the company, would say, gosh, this is too expensive of stuff. Your margins aren't big enough. People don't need a really nice mask. They just need something cheap to check the box. And I was like, no. If I'm going to put my name on this, it's going to have to save a life if it needs to. And it was just exciting to be able to tell people, hey, you've got one. And, so, it was a wild time, and we were trying to figure it out. Businesses were shutting down. We moved our entire operation, all of our warehousing, to a warehouse where they were shipping essential goods, so we would remain open. There was so much entrepreneurial action happening during that time, and just trying to figure out where to get inventory and how to keep the doors open and how to keep people safe and healthy. And to your point, nobody knew what was going to happen. I mean, I actually thought maybe I'd get an extra elk season that year because the whole world was going to shut down and grocery stores would be closed, and this might be fun. I might just go elk hunting in the backyard. And,
only you would go, hang on, this could work out really well. We're going to have to go to full survival mode now. Now I'm in my element.
I was excited. I'm kind of bummed it never came to that, even for a week. But
it sounds like you made really quick, decisive decisions during that time as well, right? I mean, it's kind of like, we got to get this right. We're in the survival business. People are fearful for their lives right now.
Right. And one of the crazy things that was happening was, people were asking us a ton of questions. The best way to answer that is a YouTube video or a blog. And at the same time, YouTube as an organization, if you were if you were saying anything that they didn't like, they would block you and shut you down. So it was like, it's like one of those heist movies where there's a bunch of lasers, in the museum, and you're trying to carefully navigate your way over to the Mona Lisa. People were asking, we were trying to give good information and as much as we knew, and not be a purveyor of false information or anything like that. It was a wild time all the way around. But you had to make quick decisions. You had to be quick to admit if something was wrong or if information was changing. And it's amazing how many people were upset with us and how many people thought we were lifesavers all at the same time for the same stuff. But that's what we signed up for, and we had to do it.
You survived. You've done pretty well out of it. And I saw recently you've transitioned from just being online. You're now in retail stores, right? Around the US, or is that globally, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so last year we opened about 230 stores. So a lot of hook and bullet, Bass Pro, Cabela's, Sportsman's, Shields. We've got probably 4 or 5 other big retailers that are coming on the next couple of months. I probably shouldn't announce yet in case something happens, but
of course, yeah.
Really big companies. We sell through online retailers like Backcountry and Huckberry and guys like that. And it's been interesting. We were strictly through our website for 4 years. And one of the challenges, of course, is, you're down in Florida. Oh, geez, there's a hurricane hitting in 2 days. I need to get some gear. Yeah. Well, are you going to trust that UPS is going to deliver in 2 days? Yeah. Or are you going to drive, to whatever store 45 minutes away and try to get your supplies there? So for us, it makes a lot of sense to try to get our products around the country and have them accessible to people. It also does really well for our brand because, man, it's really hard to show the value in an Instagram photo of everything that's in the kit. But when you can go touch it and feel the weight of it and see the products, it starts to make sense as to why it's as expensive as it is versus other products. And so, we've seen a lot of success there, and I'm hoping that continues to go and we continue to grow and kind of keep working to make the world a better place. No,
it's fantastic, mate. Do you have a favorite product that you guys have put out recently that you kind of like, we've nailed that one?
Gosh, the new ones are always my favorite because they're exciting and they're new. Yeah. One of my favorite things to give people is we have this battery jump starter we call the Zeus, and it's pretty small. I don't know how to compare it to size. It's about as long as a banana, but like a little rectangle. And that thing will start up to an 8-liter diesel in the dead of winter when your battery's dead, and it'll charge your devices, and it has a flashlight on it. And it's relatively inexpensive. And you just think how much you depend on your car and how dangerous it can be when you're somewhere by yourself and you left a dome light on and now you can't get out and there's no cell service. And people love that product, and that's been one of our top sellers forever. And it's just one of those things I think everybody.
I need to get one of those. I don't have a Zeus yet. I got to get the Zeus.
We're sold out right now, but I will get you one when they come in. We just can't keep them in stock. We've got and then the microchip issue is a big problem getting more of those. But we did just release a couple new products that will probably be interesting to this audience. One is kind of a weatherproof first aid kit with a Molly backer for boats and for ATVs and that kind of a thing. But we just won Gear of the Show at Outdoor Retailer in Denver last summer with what we're calling the Wolf Pack. And it's a dog collar with a first aid kit built into it. Very small, but kind of taking inspiration from those old St. Bernards that had the brandy or the whiskey around their neck. But it's a very small kit designed to keep your dog safe from cuts and bites and scrapes and whatever they come in contact with. And there's nothing like that out there. And that's a really cool product. And then we came out with what we call the Park Pack, which is a new hip pack. And we actually worked a long time on this. I like the idea of hip packs. I've never found one that fits very well. They're always flopping. They're always catching on your mountain bike seat when you're going to stand up. Yeah. The cable's falling down. We built a kit that just, you forget you have it on. It doesn't flop. It's got a bunch of kind of modularity to it. You can take the water bottle holders off and you could put a bear spray canister or a pistol or fly fishing or building a bunch of accessories. It's got a first aid kit built into it. It's got straps to take your, if you have a light jacket on in the morning, take it off and bundle it up. Those straps also work to kind of secure the load so that it doesn't flop around. When I was testing this thing, I would go out and run the mountains with my dog, and I've got water for my dog and me, and a little set of binoculars. I look for animals, and my phone, and you forget you have it on. It's an amazing
What's that one called?
kit.
If I was to look it up, what's it called?
It's called the Park Pack, and they're literally arriving this week. So yeah, go check that thing out. It's way better than a running vest. It's the best hip pack on the market, and I'm really excited about this because I think this is going to be something that gets us out of the survival space a little bit and just gets us into people kind of using our stuff on a daily basis. And then having that first aid kit included in it is going to be just a great piece of coverage for when you fall or bang into something or whatever.
Listening to these products is getting me thinking, and you build great products that are strong and are going to last. And it leads me to my next question, which is, how do you retain somebody that loves your products if they're just going to buy it once and be gone? How do you have can you do a subscription model or anything like that? I'm wondering kind of long term.
You have quickly identified the biggest problem we have with our company.
It's only because I'm in the tech space now, and we look at subscription models and all sorts of things. Right. So just my head's there. Yeah. So that's one of our biggest problems is almost 5-star reviews across the board on our products, but a significant percentage of our customers are one-time buyers because they buy and it lasts. It doesn't break down. And I'm really proud of that, but it's also not the best thing for business. No. So, back to the hip pack and things like that, we're trying to create things that people are just going to use more, and it's going to be more social. So they, their friends see it and then they buy, and we can maybe lower our cost of acquiring a customer. We are working on subscriptions around, hey, your batteries are about to expire, your food's about to expire. Like, let's refresh that. And we're working on those types of things, but that is our biggest challenge we're working to solve right now. And I think that's good for the customer, knowing that like our products just last forever. It's an investment that you can count on. But from a business side, that's what we need to figure out is how do we create a subscription around this? How do we create content that's interesting and refreshes and all that stuff? Yeah,
and,
it is one of those things that you want. Obviously, your customers are happy. I know we're very happy with everything that we've purchased, and it's kind of like, but once I've got it, how do we keep coming back? So that, I like that could be a future discussion. I like to think of what that could be. I have one question for you because I know there's been a couple of hiccups. And this comes from the entrepreneurial kind of way of looking at things. Employing the right people and trying to avoid the wrong. What kind of people are you looking at when you're employing at Uncharted?
Gosh, I've stumbled on that many times. I've hired friends who have absolutely failed me and stolen and everything else. And then I've hired people that I just thought were on a whim that ended up being some of our best employees. Our longest tenured employee here at Uncharted is a girl named Kate Sear who answered a classified ad. We were looking for a social media manager, and she's like, yeah, I'll do that. And she's just a go-getter. And she's a huge, huge part of our company now, 3 or 4 years later. And there were a lot of times it was just me and her grinding. And I'm so thankful that she stuck with it. And I never would have thought, a person just walking in off a classified would have been that person. At the same time, I never thought close friends would have done what they did behind my back. So, gosh, anymore, and I'm not an expert on this. This is probably a conversation for someone else. But what I've begun to do is kind of walk before we run with anybody. If people want to work with you bad enough and they're the right person, give them a way to win. That's a short-term thing. We hired a sales guy recently, and for 6 months, we're like, hey, we'll just pay you a commission and go find it. And he landed a couple really big accounts, and it's like, okay, let's go full-time, and I was willing to commit more then. But if somebody comes in and says they can sell and you hire them and 6 months in, they haven't sold anything, you've lost a lot of resources, a lot of investment, a lot of time. So for me anymore, it's kind of testing the waters before you fully jump in with people. And I get that might not be the best answer for everyone, but that's kind of how I've been approaching it lately. And it's been working much better than taking somebody at face value and learning 6 or 8 months later that it wasn't the right decision.
Well, I think it's coming from the work from home culture that we've got now too, that you actually can have a little bit more of that contractual type work or that commission-based work where you don't have to employ full-time, part-time. You can actually look at results and then look at a full-time position. I think it's a good way to do it.
Right.
What about, have you had any kind of massive failures or setbacks? And what have you learned from those, I guess? Have you got any examples there that you've been able to learn and grow from?
I mean, there's any entrepreneur will tell you there's a ton of setbacks. And if they don't, they're absolutely lying to you.
Yeah. It's a roller coaster, isn't it?
I always say we're like Lewis and Clarking this thing. Not only is the survival space, when we started, it's like, if you wanted to buy a survival kit, you went to an army surplus store, you went in the back and there's some dusty old backpack with a bunch of junk in it. I mean, when we started this, there was no blueprint. People told us it wouldn't work. People won't spend $75. How are you going to sell something for $350? And I believe that we could, and we did, but there's a lot of figuring out, hiring people, product development. We made a few products that just haven't sold as well. We've had other ones that we underestimated, and those are both problems, right? There's so much that can happen. The one thing that's popping into my head is, we're suddenly going to be in retail, right? We don't even have hang tags on our bags. We just have always been direct to consumer. You put the bag in a box and you ship it to somebody. So I have one sitting right here. We made these little hang tags and we were really proud of these little hang tags. I'm like, yeah, this is going to sell for sure. Our sell-through was horrible at these stores. People the companies didn't know where to hang them. Do we hang them next to the hiking backpacks, or do we hang them next to first aid or in the camping section? And then, they would just sit there and nobody would take the time to grab the tag and look at it. So we had like a 17% sell-through our first couple months in a lot of these big stores. And we were at the risk of being kicked out, and then you never get back in. So we designed these big boxes that the kits go in, and they're these glossy, screen printed all the way around, and suddenly our sell-through like quadrupled.
Wow.
So there's just constant learning. I think you have to check your ego at the door. You have to just be like, hey, we're just going to figure this out. If we make a mistake, you have to fail fast and you have to move on. And it's endless, man. I mean, when you're really doing something that hasn't really been done before, or you haven't done before, it's an MBA times 10.
Yeah.
You just have to have the learning mindset and be humble about it, and just continually look for a better solution. Yeah. And that's the only way forward.
It's a great answer. I've been fortunate, in sport, I surrounded myself with fantastic people, and now I'm kind of more in this entrepreneurial business world. I feel like I've got yourself and my business partner, Ed Baker, as great mentors. Who are you using, or do you have mentors to help sort of guide you along the way?
Yeah, I have been really lucky. Earlier I alluded to the Hard Apple Cider company and Joe Herron. And, early on, Joe was a big mentor, and he was a mentor in a very unique way. He had a bunch of one-liners that I still like. I should almost just tattoo them on my body, because they kind of frame up how much how I think about things every day. I remember him once saying, how do you find a needle in a haystack? Put more needles in the haystack, or he always had this interesting different angle at things. And,
I love a brain like that.
Yeah, I've got a dozen of those that I live by. His thing where he's like, if you don't have any sales, you don't have a business. Like, what are you doing? And I thought I was moving pretty quick, but the lesson was move faster. And so that's been something I've leaned on for a long time. Todd Ballard works with us right now. Todd was the CMO at GoPro. He was a guy that I, used to go to with projects when I was growing up, and he had faith in me. And now it's humbling to have him on the team and helping guide us, when we were doing retail and talking about POP displays. Everybody knows those big GoPro screens in a store, and he helped us build a similar thing for Uncharted and kind of navigate different things. And he's been really helpful. Mike Duffner is our CFO. Mike has been the CFO of Reynolds Cycling, DPS Skis, a lot of experience in the outdoor space. And, Mike and I kind of tag team every day. I'm kind of the creative idea guy, and he's kind of the execution guy, and I would be totally lost without him. So, I'm always surrounding myself with people that I look up to. I just came back from a trade show in Las Vegas, and I was meeting with a guy named Vic Keller. Vic owns several companies, just sold a bunch of automotive businesses to Berkshire Hathaway, and I was pretty interested in Uncharted, and maybe coming in some kind of capacity. And for me, it's even less about maybe the investment or whatever, and more exciting just to just to have the idea of like having that brain thinking about our company.
Absolutely.
So, I think my job is not to be the oracle of answers. My job is to find the people with the answers.
Exactly.
And to keep bringing them in. And that's how I
never be the smartest guy in the room.
Nope, I rarely am.
You're thinking product development and you want to employ someone in product development. You don't want to be employing yourself. You want to be employing somebody better than you. And there's been a lot of that kind of learning. If I was to get a job at Uncharted, not that I'm asking, do you guys have it where I kind of think of this outdoorsy, you're in Park City. Are you all outdoorsy people, adventurous? Do you make a Wednesday lunchtime hike, or is that the kind of work culture you guys have? What is it like there?
Yeah, so our office is right in the heart of Park City. The rail trail is 50 feet outside our door, which is the old railroad bed actually, and right where they connected the east and the west years ago. Yeah. So there's this huge dirt trail that goes right out, and there's mountains right in front of us. I have really worked hard to create a culture that's a little different than a normal job. And, historically it didn't work very well because I had people that would take advantage of it, but we have a really great team now. And if it's snowing and it's a powder day, we often text and communicate. And if somebody's like, hey, I'm going to go ski this morning, I'm like, good, go. Mm-hmm. They know that I expect them to see emails at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, because they took the time off in the morning. So I've really tried to make everybody own what they're responsible for. And if they want to go and do something, they should go do it. I mean, I really don't believe in working 5/7 of your life and from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and you should be really effective then, and then you can turn it off and do something else. Like, human body doesn't work that way. At least mine doesn't. No. And you can't control, when the storms are going to come in, or when the fishing's good or whatever. So I just tell people, hey, get the work done and go have fun. Yeah. And if the work starts to not get done, then we're going to have a conversation. But we've really tried to build that. And I would say our team, that's one of the other challenges we have, is all of our imagery ends up being kind of white Utah outdoorsy people. And it's something we really have to work at, is like, because our products work for anybody, right? How do you bring in the mom in an urban area or whatever? And so, it's something we are cognizant about, making sure there's a strong female voice and there's an urban voice, and it's not just kind of drinking the Kool-Aid and building stuff exactly for who we are, because the opportunity is much bigger than that. But,
I like that.
But yeah, that's our situation.
Fantastic, mate. Well, this has been unreal. What's next for you guys then? You've moved into retail. You're trying to get product in, and I mean, everybody's trying to get product in, it seems, at the moment. But, what's next for you personally and also for Uncharted?
Gosh, I'm 41 and single at some point. We joke about this all the time.
Is this an advertisement?
Yeah, right now. I didn't mean it that way, but on the personal
everybody,
level.
41, single, outdoorsman, one of the best men I know, available. Hit him up on Instagram. There you go.
I would like to have a family at some point on a personal level. On the professional level, this takes all my time, and I think it should. And I feel like we are on the path to really build something big here. So new products, partnerships, more retail stores, just growing the business, trying to figure out how to be better every day and how to keep the team excited and inspired. And I really feel like this will be my life's work when it's all said and done. And I think if we can sell 1 million, 5 million kits, we've made the world a safer place. We've created the opportunity for people to not only take care of themselves, but maybe help a friend or a neighbor in need. And when you start doing that at scale, that's a big mission, and that's really exciting. So I'm in no rush to get out of this. I'm hoping that as we grow, it allows for more interesting experiences for all of us involved and bigger opportunities. But we're in the grind right now, right, and it's hard, but it's rewarding, and that's my life.
Well, mate, this has been fantastic. Your passion, your stories, all that you're doing, it's always coming from the right place, and I think that's just something that we can all learn from, mate. So it's just been absolutely brilliant to just spend this time and sit. And I know we often do catch up during the year, but this one I wanted to record and let everybody else hear what an extraordinary man you are.
I'm just glad we didn't get into the bike rides you and I have gone on, or specifically that one with Rennie's baby shower where we all had way too much to drink.
We were a little hungover, weren't we?
little hungover, and then you guys took me straight up. Is it Left-Hand Canyon, or is that
I think we went up Lee Hill with no warm up. Just straight up Lee Hill, the steepest sort of mountain there, and then straight onto Left-Hand Canyon.
And you and Tim. I mean, I always tell people, if you've seen Jumanji, when the herd runs through and there's that one fat rhino about 5 seconds later every time, that's how I feel hanging out with you guys. So I had a brief triathlon, I did probably 10 races when I was living in California, and man, that's fun. But you guys are something else. It's all
past tense for me now, mate. I'd be you now on that. I'm the, what do you call it? A fat rhino out the back, whatever. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, mate, that'll be me. Well, Christian, mate, just thanks for coming on and sharing all those stories. It was really fantastic, mate.
You bet. Thanks, Greg.
All right. And thanks, everybody, for listening. You can go check out Ask Christian some questions if you want at anyquestion.com/Christian Schauf. And he'll be there. You'll answer some questions for us, won't you, there every now and then?
Yep.
People will find you there?
Yeah, they can find me there. I've got all my Instagram and stuff. Usually it's just my name or the company. You should be able to find us. So,
perfect.
Yeah, I'm diving into any questions, and just hit me up. Happy to be of service.
Thanks a lot for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.